They say you don't just marry a person, you marry their past, their pain, their people. What they don't say, or maybe they don't dare to, is that sometimes your own people are the ones who tear your marriage apart. My name is Adam Rahimi. I'm 30 years old. I was raised in a conservative Muslim household. My parents, both Iranian immigrants, built their lives in the United States from the ground up, with little more than grit, sacrifice, and a firm belief that tradition must never be compromised. I grew up with Quranic verses framed on our walls, Friday prayers like clockwork, and family dinners where no one raised their voice unless it was about religion or honor. I never questioned it. Until I met Leah Grant. She wasn't Muslim. She wasn't Persian. She wasn't anything my parents would have picked for me. And yet, the moment I met her, I knew I'd never be the same again. We met during our second year of law school. She was late to class, rushing in with a coffee stain on her blouse and a notebook held together by duct tape. I offered her a pen because she didn't have one. She said, "You just saved my grade," and smiled like it was a joke, but her eyes meant it. We studied together. Then we started sharing more than outlines. She told me about growing up in a liberal Protestant household, church on Sundays, but no real pressure. Her family believed in open-mindedness, social justice, community. I told her about my parents. About the way my mother still cooked rice with saffron every Thursday and left me voicemails that always ended with, "Remember your prayers, Johnum." About the way my father would quote hadith like he was preparing me for court arguments. She listened. She didn't mock. She didn't challenge. She just listened. And somehow, we worked. I introduced her to my world in pieces. A Persian restaurant here. An Islamic art museum there. She learned how to greet my elders with a respectful salam, how to make tadig without burning it, how to sit through my father's long-winded stories without fidgeting. She tried. God, she tried. And I thought, maybe love really is enough. But I forgot, love is never enough when it threatens someone's sense of identity. Especially when that someone is your parents. We got married in a courthouse. It wasn't some grand rebellion. We just couldn't wait anymore. The pandemic had delayed our wedding plans, and we wanted something simple. Just the two of us, 2 friends as witnesses, and a quiet dinner afterward. I told my parents a week later. It was the first time I saw my father cry. Not tears of joy. Tears of rage. "You married a non-Muslim without telling us?" he said, his voice shaking. "She respects our culture?" I tried to explain. "She's kind. She supports me. We want the same things. She doesn't believe in the same God," my mother whispered. "She believes in a God," I countered. "She believes in goodness." My father stood up, pushed his chair back so hard it screeched. "You dishonored this family." That was the word they kept using, dishonor. Not betrayal. Not disappointment. Dishonor. Like I had dragged our name through the dirt by loving someone outside of what they defined as pure. We didn't speak for weeks. Leah kept asking if I wanted to try again. "Maybe if we invite them over," she said. "If they just get to know me, they'll see." "They don't want to see," I told her. "But they're your parents." "Yes," I said. "And you're my wife." There was a pause. And then she said, "Am I making you choose?" That question split me in half. "No," I said. "They are." We tried, of course. We invited them to dinner. Just once. Leah wore long sleeves. She cooked a Persian meal from scratch. She greeted them in Farsi. She didn't drink wine. She smiled. My mother didn't even eat. My father spoke only when necessary. At the end of the night, he said, "She seems nice, but that doesn't change what she is." "What is she?" I asked. not Muslim. That was all that mattered. The months passed. Leah and I moved into a new apartment in Silver Lake. She got a job with a non-profit focused on immigration rights. I joined a small firm downtown. We built a life, quiet, happy hours. But the silence from my family hung over everything. Birthdays, holidays, Ramadan spent apart. My sister had a baby. I wasn't invited to the Akika. My mother had surgery. I found out from a cousin 2 weeks later. Every phone call I initiated ended with the same cold wall. When are you going to come to your senses? When are you going to fix this? When are you going to undo what you've done? They meant divorce. They didn't even pretend anymore. And every time, I said the same thing. I'm not leaving her. Until one day my father said, "Then don't come back." I broke down that night. Leah found me on the floor of our bedroom, hands clenched into fists, face buried in the carpet. "I lost them," I whispered. She didn't say, "It's okay." She didn't say, "They'll come around." She just sat beside me, held my hand, and whispered, "I'm still here." And that's when I realized love is quiet. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't ask for sacrifice without giving more. It just stays. But silence isn't a resolution. And pressure, when it builds, finds new cracks to exploit. Because a few weeks later, my mother called, crying, "I miss you, Adam. I miss you too. I want you to come home. I can't do that without her. She's the reason your father doesn't sleep anymore. She's not the reason. Your pride is." There was a pause. Then the question, "Would you consider divorce?" My stomach dropped. Man, just think about it. Please. For our family. For your future children. Children. That word struck deeper than I expected. Because in their eyes, any children I had with Leah wouldn't count. They wouldn't be Rahimi enough. Wouldn't be Muslim enough. Wouldn't be theirs. That night, I sat across from Leah at dinner. She looked tired. Overworked. Kind. Beautiful. I took her hand. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked up, and the words caught in my throat. Because I didn't know how to tell the woman I loved that my family still saw her as a sin. I didn't sleep the night my mother asked me to consider divorce. The words sat like poison in my throat, seeping through my body, infecting every thought. Even the air felt heavier. It wasn't the question itself that shattered me. It was the tone in which she said it. Soft. Pleading. Like she genuinely believed that my marriage was a wound she was asking me to bandage by cutting off the limb. I lay beside Leah, staring at the ceiling, her breath slow and even. She didn't know. Not yet. She had no idea that while she was asleep, the people who once held me in their arms were trying to erase the most sacred choice I'd ever made. I turned my face toward her in the dark and watched her for a long time. Her face in sleep was still, peaceful, unafraid. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in weeks. Anger. Not at her. At them. At the audacity of trying to rewire the very core of my life just to make themselves more comfortable. The next morning, I left early. I told Leah I had a meeting downtown, which was only half true. I needed space. Not from her, but from the weight of being between two worlds. I walked around Little Tehran with a black coffee in my hand, the scent of saffron and cardamom rising from the bakeries, the sound of Persian radio drifting out of barbershops. It was home, but only on the surface. Because here, I wasn't Adam the husband. I was Adam the traitor. Adam who married outside. Adam who defied the circle. Around 11 a.m. I found myself outside my parents' house. I hadn't been there in months. Not since the night I told them Leah and I had married without a traditional nikah ceremony. Not since they said, if she can't be part of your faith, she won't be part of our family. But something pulled me there. Maybe guilt, maybe defiance. Maybe I just wanted to look them in the eyes and say, she's still here, and I'm still standing. I knocked. My father answered the door. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't smile either. Adam, he said, stepping aside. I walked in. The house smelled like lamb stew and rosewater, just like it always had. But now it felt unfamiliar, like a house I'd once known in a dream. My mother sat in the living room. She stood when she saw me. Junam, she whispered. I nodded but didn't hug her. I need to say something, I said, my voice firm. They waited. I took a breath. You need to stop. The calls, the guilt, the threats wrapped in sweetness. Adam. My mother started. No, I said. You had your say. Now let me have mine. My father folded his arms. You made your choice, he said coldly. Yes, I said. I chose love. I chose someone who stands beside me, who lifts me up, who doesn't ask me to change the core of who I am. She's not Muslim. She's not your Muslim, I corrected. But she's more faithful to our marriage than I've seen some people be to their mosques. My mother flinched. You think that's fair? She said. You think being devout doesn't matter? I think kindness matters. Loyalty matters. Choosing someone again and again, especially when it's hard, that matters. My father shook his head. You're rewriting morality. No, I said. I'm applying it. I stood there for a long moment, letting the words settle. Then I said quietly, you're my parents. I love you, but I won't let you weaponize that love to control my marriage. They said nothing, not even goodbye when I walked out. And that hurt more than anything. When I got home, Leah was waiting at the kitchen counter. She was holding her phone. Her eyes were red. I froze. What's wrong? She turned the phone toward me. A message thread. From a blocked number. You should have walked away before you ruined his life. You'll never belong in our family. You're making him choose hell over heaven. My blood went cold. Who sent this? I don't know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I have a guess. I reached for the phone. My hands were shaking. I'm so sorry. She stood. Adam, I can take a lot, but not this. Not if it means you're caught in the middle every single day. You're not making me choose. No, she said, but someone is. That night, we sat on the couch, our dinner cold and untouched on the table. She reached for my hand. I love you, she said, but I won't survive in a marriage where I'm treated like a threat to your soul. I swallowed hard. I've never doubted you, I said. Not once. Then why do I feel like I'm the one who has to prove something? That question haunted me, even after she fell asleep, even as I watched the city lights flicker beyond our balcony. Because the truth was, she was proving something. Every day. That love without religious compatibility didn't mean love without respect. That interfaith didn't have to mean interference. That choosing her wasn't abandoning God, it was honoring the way God made me, with a heart and a mind of my own. The next day, I went back to the mosque I grew up in. Not for a sermon. Just to sit. The imam recognized me. He sat beside me in silence for a while. Then he said, You look like someone asking permission to breathe. I smiled sadly. Can I ask something? I said. Of course. Can two people love each other, love God, and not belong to the same faith? He looked at me, then said something I didn't expect. Faith is not a blood type, Adam. It's not inherited. It's chosen. It's lived. And sometimes it's found in the quiet respect between two people who don't say the same prayers, but believe in the same dignity. I nodded. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was betraying anything. I felt like I was becoming. When I got home, Leah was in the living room. She stood as soon as I walked in. "I'm not going anywhere," I said before she could speak. "Adam, you are not my sin. You are not my shame. You are my wife." Her eyes filled. "I can't fight your family for the rest of my life. You won't have to." And I meant it. Because in that moment, I made a promise to myself. That love would no longer be the thing I defended. It would be the thing I lived. It started with a dinner invitation. Not from my parents, those had stopped weeks ago, but from my uncle, Uncle Hamid, my father's older brother, and the unofficial voice of our extended family. He had always been the respectable one. A man who led community fundraisers, organized mosque events, ran his own export business, and kept a photo of Mecca on his living room wall large enough to be seen from the street. The message came as a voicemail. "Adam, your aunt and I would love to have you and Leah over for dinner. It's been too long." It sounded harmless, friendly, even warm. But I knew better. This was not a dinner. This was a summons. A trial. Leah wasn't sure. "They didn't support us before," she said. "Why now?" "Because they want to feel like they tried," I replied. "They want to say they offered an olive branch before deciding whether to cut us off entirely." "Then why go?" "Because if they're going to judge us, I want them to do it with the full picture. With you in the room. With my hand in yours." She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll go," she said, "but not to win them over. I'm done performing for people who've already made up their minds." God, I loved her in that moment more than I ever had. We arrived with flowers and a bottle of sparkling water. They greeted us at the door, polite smiles but stiff shoulders. Aunt Sarah hugged me tightly, said nothing to Leah. Uncle Hamid smiled wide, too wide. We sat down to dinner. Saffron chicken, eggplant stew, fresh herbs, and Tafton bread warm enough to burn your fingers. The conversation was pleasant at first. Work, politics, weather. Then, halfway through the meal, Uncle Hamid set down his fork. "So," he said, smiling at Leah, "tell me, how do you and Adam plan to raise your children?" Silence. Leah froze, fork midair. I cleared my throat. "We haven't decided yet," I said carefully. "We've talked about sharing both cultures." "But what about faith?" he asked. "Faith is not just culture. It's obedience. Legacy." Leah set her fork down. "With respect," she said softly, "I think faith is also about compassion, about humility, about not assuming one path is the only sacred one." Aunt Sarah looked down at her plate. Uncle Hamid leaned back. "And if the child becomes confused," he said, "if they grow up with no clear direction?" I smiled tightly. "They'll have what most children don't, options. Context. Room to choose. And if they choose wrong?" he asked. Leah answered before I could. "Then we will love them anyway." That shut the table up. For a minute. Then Uncle Hamid looked at me. "Adam, you must understand how this looks to your father. You were the son who was supposed to carry the name. Now you've married outside, skipped the Islamic ceremony, and barely attend the mosque anymore. People talk." "I know," I said. "Let them. You would really give up your family for this?" "No," I said. "But I will not give up her to keep people comfortable." We didn't stay for dessert. The fallout came quickly. Phone calls stopped. Aunts who once sent me holiday cookies removed me from their group chats. My cousin texted me once. "I'm still on your side, but it's better if we don't talk for now. Things are tense. Tense! As if I had brought a bomb into the community by marrying someone outside the expected parameters. At work, things were better. My partner at the firm was Jewish. She invited me to her Shabbat dinner with her family. I hadn't expected to feel so welcomed. So human. We ate, drank, laughed. They asked about Leah. No one asked what she believed, only how she loved. When I told Leah about it, she smiled. "I'm glad you're finding a tribe," she said. "But I wanted my tribe to be my family," I replied. That night, we sat on the couch, holding mugs of tea. "You can still walk away," she said quietly, "if this is too much." I looked at her, stunned. "You think I'd leave you now? You're bleeding for this marriage," she whispered, "and I can't stop the cut." I reached for her hand. "I don't need the bleeding to stop," I said. "I just need to know it's for something worth saving." "And is it?" "Yes," I said, "because you never asked me to choose." "They did." She nodded, eyes filled. The next day, I got a call from my father. First time in a month. He didn't waste time. "I hear you went to Hamid's." "Yes." "Good. Then maybe you've had time to think." "I've thought a lot," I said. "And?" "I'm still with her." Silence. Then, "You've chosen hell over heaven." "No," I said. "I've chosen love over fear. You don't know what's coming. I know what's already here." And I hung up. 2 nights later, Leah and I went to dinner with friends. A couple we hadn't seen in months. They brought their newborn baby. I held her for a while, her tiny fingers curling around mine. And for the first time, I let myself imagine what our child might look like. A little of me. A little of Leah. Loved by both. Not despite our differences, but because of them. Leah saw the look in my eyes. "I'm not ready yet," she said softly. "But one day, maybe." I nodded. "So long as no one else decides for us." Later that night, we lay in bed. Leah turned to me and whispered, "Do you ever wonder if we made a mistake?" I thought about it, then said, "I think the mistake would have been pretending this love wasn't real just to please people who never wanted to understand it." She smiled, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a marriage. It was a rebellion, a prayer, a new kind of faith, and I had no intention of giving it up. There are moments when a decision becomes more than just a choice. It becomes a declaration, a line drawn in permanent ink. It wasn't a single fight or a dramatic scene that broke what was left between me and my family. It was an invitation, a wedding invitation. My cousin Nassim, the daughter of Uncle Hamid, was getting married in late August. A large, traditional celebration in the mosque's banquet hall. She was a sweet girl, always had been. Grew up with me like a sister. The envelope was hand-delivered. White, gold trim, Arabic calligraphy on the front. And beneath our names, scrawled in elegant cursive, "Dear Adam, we hope you can attend. Kindly note, this event is being held in accordance with Islamic values. Spouses who are not practicing Muslims are respectfully asked not to attend." Leah read it 3 times. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "They didn't even bother to pretend." "No," I said. "They invited you, not us. They never meant for there to be an U.S." I didn't RSVP, but I did show up. Alone. In a dark suit, no tie, hair slicked back like my father used to insist when I was younger. People stared when I walked in. Not all with hate. Some with pity. A few with sadness. But mostly with the kind of quiet judgment that feels like being undressed in public. Nassim smiled when she saw me. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. I wanted to include her. I fought them. I know, I said. It's not your fault. Uncle Hamid didn't look at me. Aunt Sarah nodded stiffly. Then I saw my father. He approached slowly, hands clasped behind his back. You came. She's my cousin. You could have brought her. No, I said. You didn't invite my wife. You invited the version of me you wanted back. He narrowed his eyes. You've changed. No, I said. I've just stopped hiding. He didn't respond, just walked away. I stayed long enough to hug Nassim, to take a photo with the groom. Then I left. I texted Leah from the parking lot. You were right. They didn't even try. She replied almost instantly. Come home. Let's write a new tradition. That night, we did something small but profound. We wrote letters to ourselves, to the version of us that had been too much, that had begged, that had hoped for understanding from people who never had room to give it. We wrote down what we wanted in a family, in a community, in a future child. We sealed them in envelopes and tucked them into a box we called Our House Rules. No pressure. No scripts. Just us. A week later, my father showed up at my office. No warning. No appointment. Just walked in during my lunch break, looking tired in a way I hadn't seen before. I need to talk, he said. We sat in a conference room. He didn't waste time. I've been sick. My heart stopped. What kind of sick? Something with the liver. The tests weren't good. I exhaled. Baba, I didn't come to make you feel guilty, he said. I came to ask a favor. I waited. I don't know how much time I have. But before I go, I want to see my family whole again. You want me to leave her? I said flatly. No, he said finally. I want to understand how to love the man you became. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a crack in the wall. And sometimes, cracks are where the light gets in. We had him over for dinner. Leah cooked his favorite dish, gourmet sabzi. He said little ate slowly. He asked about her work. She asked about his books. It was civil, tense, but real. At the end of the night, he said, You remind me of my mother. Strong, opinionated, stubborn. Leah smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. It was, he said, and that was how it started to change. Not because he suddenly loved her, but because he stopped making her the enemy. But peace didn't come easy. My sister stopped speaking to me. My mother wrote a letter I still haven't opened. And the mosque board revoked my offer to speak at the youth seminar. Because your lifestyle might confuse the young ones. It hurt. All of it. But it didn't shake me. Because now I understood. I wasn't losing a community. I was leaving one that refused to see me. And that's different. That's power. Months later, Leah and I traveled to Istanbul. We wandered the courtyards of the Blue Mosque. We lit candles in a small church tucked between two hills. We held hands in silence while the call to prayer rang out over rooftops. And I whispered, God is still here. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. Maybe he never left. We came home stronger, unbreakable, and with one final decision in mind, to renew our vows. Not because the first ones didn't count, but because we wanted to say them again, louder, clearer, unafraid. Just us. And a few friends who had chosen us not for what we believed, but for who we were. This time, we ended our vows with a promise. We will not let the world undo what we built from love. And when we kissed, there were no traditions standing between us. Only truth. Only choice. Only the beginning of something we could finally call ours. You don't measure a marriage by the wedding. You measure it by the mornings. by the arguments that end in arms instead of silence, by the moments when everything could break but doesn't, by the people who stay when leaving would be easier. By that metric, Leah and I had been married a dozen lifetimes. Not because we aged faster, but because we carried more. More expectation, more backlash, more "you should have," and "they never will," from people who had no right to speak into our covenant. But we were still here. And in the quiet of our new home, the one we bought together, 2 cities away from the judgment and traditions we left behind, we found a kind of peace that didn't need anyone's blessing. We made new routines. Leah planted a lemon tree in the backyard. I built a bookshelf taller than I am, just for the 24 books we'd marked as ours. We had a playlist of songs that began with silence and ended with violins. We called it heaven if it's earned. Sometimes we still got mail addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Rahimi plus guest. We laughed. We stopped explaining ourselves. We stopped defending what needed no defense. One evening, Leah came home later than usual. She was quiet, thoughtful. We sat on the back porch, wine in our hands, twilight hanging in the air. "I've been thinking," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous." She smiled faintly. "If we ever, have a kid, what faith would they be?" The question didn't hit me the way it might have months ago. Back then, it would have sent me spiraling into theology, family drama, defensiveness. Now, it just felt curious, a wondering. I leaned back, sipped my wine. "I think," I said slowly, "we'd raise them with questions, not fear. With stories from both of us. With a God who listens more than he demands." She nodded. "You okay with that?" I took her hand. "I'm okay as long as they know they were born from a love that didn't surrender. That's a faith I can live with." 6 months later, we found out she was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but it didn't feel accidental either. It felt like the world finally stopped holding its breath. We waited 12 weeks before telling anyone. Then, one morning, I called my mother. I didn't tell Leah I was going to. It was a choice I had to make alone. She answered on the second ring. Her voice, older somehow. "Adam?" "Hi, Maman." Silence. Then, cautious warmth. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I said. "Leah and I are okay." "I'm glad." Another pause. I said it quickly. "We're expecting." I heard her inhale sharply. "Oh, I'm not asking for anything," I said. "I just wanted you to know. You have a grandchild coming." A long silence. Then, "Can I meet her?" My throat tightened. "She's not here yet." I met Leah. I didn't know what to say. "Maybe." Then I hung up before I changed my mind. That weekend, my parents drove 2 hours to our home. They brought fruit. A small silver necklace from my grandmother. A cookbook from my childhood. Leah greeted them with calm. She didn't overcompensate. She didn't shrink. She didn't wear sleeves down to her wrists or hide the soft swell just starting to form under her sweater. My mother hugged her. Tightly. Without words. My father didn't say much. But he asked if the baby would have a Persian name. I said maybe. He smiled faintly. That was all we got. That was all we needed. 9 months later, Sahar Lena Rahimi came into the world on a Monday morning just before dawn. Leah cried. I held them both, the weight of my daughter in my arms like something holy. She had Leah's mouth. My father's eyes. A birthmark shaped like a crescent moon near her left ear. We didn't baptize her. We didn't perform an Islamic naming ceremony either. Instead, we held her between us and whispered blessings in 2 languages, from 2 cultures with 1 heart. That was enough. People asked what it was like raising a child across faith lines. I told them, it's like building a bridge with your bare hands. Every day. Sometimes the wood is wet. Sometimes the wind fights you. But if you keep showing up, if you hold the tools together, it stands. It stands. Sahar is 3 now. She knows how to say salam and amen. She asks me about prayer mats and Christmas trees. She's read Bible stories and listened to the call to prayer on my phone. She knows her parents believe in love before doctrine. One night she asked, "Is God mad at Mommy because she's not like you?" Leah froze. So did I. I bent down, looked her in the eyes. "No, sweet girl," I said. "God made Mommy, just like He made me. And He put us together because He wanted you." She nodded. "Okay." Then she went back to her coloring book. Just like that. Sometimes I still get stares at the mosque. Sometimes Leah hears whispers at church. But now we don't flinch. We don't explain. Because we know. We know what we built. We know what we endured. We know what we chose. And we would choose it again. Our story didn't end in exile. It didn't end in surrender. It began in resistance. It grew in patience. It lives now in peace. Not the kind that begs to be accepted. The kind that no longer needs to be.